Hey everyone, and welcome to In the Running, a podcast where we bring your local elections to life.
We're your hosts, May Dapkus and Olivia Self, two juniors at Mountain Brook High School.
We started this podcast to help inform voters on who is running in their local elections and what those candidates do on a citywide scale.
So, we're asking the real questions about their goals, values, and what they want to do for your communities across Alabama. This is In the Running. Hello, everyone, and welcome to In the Running. I'm your host, May Dapkus.
And I'm Olivia Self, and today we're here with Mr. Case Dixon, who is running for the U.S. House of Representatives from District 6. It's so nice to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, our first question that we always ask is, we want to know more about you. So do you have any hobbies, family, or anything that you want to
Yeah, absolutely. So I always grew up in the greater Birmingham area, originally from Maylene, but when I was about 10, we moved to the McCalla area. I was homeschooled growing up. So I went through Hope Christian School, which is a cover school. I played on their basketball team. And so that really ignited in me, I think, a passion for health and fitness. And so what I do right now full time for work is work as a physical therapist assistant in home health. And so I go around and I see people that are not well enough to get out into clinic settings. I've been doing that for total in healthcare for about 8 years now. Before that, I was a lifeguard, but always in kind of this health and fitness kind of atmosphere. And so then as far as hobbies are concerned, anytime I can work out, go on a jog or lift weights, or play basketball. Anytime we can get a group of guys together at my church, anytime we can get 10 guys, 8 guys, we'll play a game of basketball up there. But then I've got a wife of just over 3 years, and then I've got 2 young kids. I've got a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old daughter.
Hey, so what inspired you to run to represent Alabama Congressional District 6?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it was my upbringing, just being homeschooled. It was ingrained in us to, I think, pay attention and to be more involved. But I always was more so on the sidelines. I was always voting, always paying attention. But I think like a lot of people during COVID, it really changed my perspective a bit as far as seeing the ramifications or the consequences, or just becoming more in tune with how the decisions you make affect other people's livelihoods and other people's lives. And so at that time during COVID, I was actually in school. So I wasn't at a place to run for office. I was trying to graduate and get a job and buy a home. So that got put on the back burner. But then whenever our first daughter was born, those same feelings came back as far as feeling the need to get involved. And so that's what I decided to do is get more involved. But what that looked like for me is I wanted to sit down and make a list. I didn't want to I'm against career politicians. And so I didn't want to just run for one office really intending to try to get somewhere later or to use one office as a stepping stone. And so I sat down and I made a list. And on one side, I put federal issues. And on the other side, I put local issues. And I really feel like that every person, through their life experiences or just things that they want to see done differently, that list is going to look different. And so for me, there were more things on the federal side than the local side. And so that's why I decided to go ahead and run for federal office. And here I am.
Interesting. Yeah, I like it. Okay, I wanted to know, so you said when your daughter was born, that inspired you
right
run for office again. What were the issues that you were really concerned about when that happened?
Well, I think first and foremost is affordability. Prices are just ever rising. My wife and I, just the difference a few years made in us buying a home versus what it could have been a couple years earlier was just drastic. And so that's the number one thing that I'm concerned about. I wear this pin that has our live national debt on it. Right now, we're at $39 trillion and some change. But what that represents is not just our national debt for the sake of our national debt, but whenever that goes up, then so does inflation because we have to print more money to cover the things that we're obligated for. And so I want my daughters to be able to buy a home and get married and start a life. And so those were the things that really catapulted me into wanting to run.
Okay. So you're 26. By far the youngest guest we've ever had on In the Running, and I'm sure you're considerably younger than your competitors. What do you think are the advantages and challenges that come with your age?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think Congress should be diverse in the sense that you need people from all sorts of different demographics to understand the plight of the American people. And right now we are very clearly skewed one way towards the older generation, which is we still need folks from older generations, but I think that we need millennials, we need Gen Z as they come up and become at the age where you can run for Congress, because they're going to understand constituents' needs that are also in that same demographic, young folks with kids that are working class. And so I would say that's the benefit and the edge that I have, is that a voice like mine, a voice like other young people's are needed. And obviously the challenges are going to be that of experience, in the sense that obviously the longer you've been around, you've seen more things. And so I think where that gap is, it's important to lean on other folks in Congress, the other members of the Alabama delegation. But I really don't see that being an issue too much, because there's 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. So if everyone just leans on their own understanding and their own experiences, I think it's really going to even out to being the best benefit of the American people.
Great. Okay, if elected to U.S. Congress, what would be your top 3 measurable goals for your term?
Yeah, so first and foremost, like we talked about, the national debt and affordability, but then also with my background in healthcare, passing some legislation that's really going to bring down healthcare costs. Secondly, is going to be nonpartisan, really no-brainer things that I think are going to improve the lives of everybody, which is going to be term limits and banning congressional stock trading. Because I think that whether it's U.S. Congress, whether it's local office, it doesn't matter. It is supposed to be a sacrifice. It's not supposed to be a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not supposed to be how can you elevate yourself. And so I think those are 2 no-brainer things that are going to make it more about service and not self-service. And then thirdly, it's really less about what I want to do and more about what I want to stop from happening, which is protecting our liberties and defending the Constitution. I think sometimes it's more important to stop bad bills than it's always good to pass good bills, but there's so many bad bills that need to be stopped. And so I think that would be the third priority, is just standing firm on principle and making sure that we are avoiding legislation that is going to erode our freedoms and liberties that we have here in America.
What do you think are some examples of those that have been proposed recently?
In all of those 3 things that I've talked about?
For the last one, like eroding civil liberties. Like I totally understand what you're saying. And
yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is going to be FISA. So that's FISA Section 702, which basically, if you were communicating with someone overseas, the federal government can then swoop up those communications because you're communicating with someone outside of the United States, and they monitor those to make sure there's no terrorist threats and other types of national security issues. But the problem is that you're an American citizen. They may not be, but you are. And so now they have your communications, and they can sift through them, look through them without ever obtaining a warrant, which is a complete violation of the Fourth Amendment, your Fourth Amendment rights, and our civil liberties. And so just a few weeks ago, and now even as we speak, they're trying to pass an extension of FISA Section 702, which allows that. It does sunset, but we've seen too many in Congress that they talk a big game, but then whenever leadership comes knocking on the door, they end up folding and trying to push forward with reauthorizing it anyway, including my opponent that I'm running against in this race right now.
Considering your first measurable goal and the pin you have, I'm really excited to ask this question, but what are your specific plans to mitigate federal spending and reduce the national debt?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost is having someone that has the backbone and spine to actually say no.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the same thing with the civil liberties, is that many times people know what's right and they say they're going to do the right thing, but when House leadership comes knocking, they end up folding. And so that's first and foremost, is just actually standing on principle. But then also, too, Senator Rand Paul has a plan that I like. It's the 6 penny plan. Unfortunately, it used to be the penny plan, but as our national debt has grown, it's now 6 pennies. And so what he proposes is cutting 6 pennies from every dollar spent for the next 5 years. And he says over 5 years that would then bring the deficit to 0. And so we would stop adding to the national debt. And that it's hard. But at the same time, I mean, everybody has their pet programs or their programs that they feel are most important. So if you have a loved one that has suffered with, let's just say, Alzheimer's research, or so they've suffered with Alzheimer's, and so you want Alzheimer's research to get funding, I mean, that's understandable. But at the same time, if you were to go to every program and say, hey, we're going to cut 6%, can you do with 96% of the funding that you had last year? I think that most people or most programs can't afford that. And so when you do that across the board, it ends up, as we said, bringing down the deficit to 0. And then that way we see lower prices here for everyone here in America, and that can be reinvested to things like more research.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. I mean, that would be all federal stuff. So federal programs
Yes.
cutting out. Interesting. Okay. Alabama is consistently ranked on the lower end of education in the U.S. What are some plans that you have to reform our education and to gradually bring it up in national rankings?
I'm in complete support of abolishing the federal Department of Education. I think decisions are best made at the local level. And so if we were to abolish the Department of Education, allow the funds that Alabama has for our school systems to stay in Alabama, and then Alabama can decide how they want to use that money, I think that we could see the education measures improve in Alabama, and then the same for other states. If every state works in their best interest, I think that we're going to see better education overall for everyone.
Alabama prisons have received serious criticism, especially in the media. How do you plan to support these prisons and improve conditions across the board?
Yeah, so I think similar thing is that most of that's going to be handled at the state level. But I think as a member of Congress or just as a upstanding citizen, I mean, we want to see humane conditions. We want to see, we don't want to see drugs getting into our prison facilities. We don't want to see guards abusing their positions of power. But most of the actual true policy is going to happen at the state level.
Considering Alabama's strong gun culture, would you support reforms like background checks, safe gun storage legislation, or cracking down on gun trafficking, stuff like that?
No, not really. Right now we have over 500 million guns circulating in the U.S. And so I would not be in support of this, but hypothetically, if you wanted to try to get all the guns off the street, I mean, it'd be near impossible to get all the guns that are circulating in the United States. And so what would end up happening if we increase regulations on guns or pass more laws that make it harder to obtain guns? Law-abiding citizens like you and I are going to be the ones that are disarmed. And then we already know criminals, they don't abide by the law because they're criminals. So then they're going to be the ones that are going to have the guns, and the folks that want to defend their families or defend their households are going to be left out by themselves without anything to protect themselves. So I would actually be opposed to increasing any sort of regulations regarding guns. I would actually like to see us do away with gun-free zones. I think that's why we see so many schools being targeted by these school shooters, is because they know that there's less guns there. And so our kids are soft targets in these school systems. And so I think that if we were to actually allow teachers in Alabama to carry, if they wanted to, concealed carry, we could still have requirements as far as meeting competency tests and things of that nature. But if you're a school shooter and you're going to a school and you think there's a chance that 15 teachers there are armed, you might think a little harder before you go up there and try to harm our kids. And so that's the type of legislation that I would like to see to bring down gun violence. I think the best defense against bad guys with guns is good guys with guns.
Interesting. Okay.
What about safe gun storage, like in homes?
Mm-hmm.
Like for kids that might get into the gun closet and harm themselves or others. Would you support that, or do you feel like that's overstep?
I mean, I still feel like that's overstep. I mean, even too, how would you enforce that?
Yeah.
I mean, is the government going to go knocking on people's doors saying, let me see how you store your guns? So no, I would not support that either. Again, I think that is parents and individuals should have a level of responsibility and make sure that they're doing the safe thing.
So Alabama ranks pretty low in rural healthcare access and just healthcare in general through national rankings. What reforms would you prioritize to get more accessible healthcare while also not increasing the cost of healthcare?
Right. So I think that, again, there's things on the state level and there's things on the federal level, and they have to both be done in tandem to really maximize the benefits there. So at the state level, I think that we have to do away with certificate of need laws. So what that is right now, it's basically if a new facility wants to come into an area, they have to demonstrate or show why there is a need for it in the community before they're allowed to start up, which obviously if you have a monopoly, if another company's in the area, they want less competition because they want all the people to come to them. So a lot of times they lobby against new facilities coming in. And so I think that really hurts Alabamians because in smaller communities, maybe they don't necessarily have the population to keep up a big facility, to keep it being profitable. And so if we would do away with these certificate of need laws, it would allow smaller facilities to come up maybe in more quantity and spread out. And that would increase access, obviously, because you wouldn't have these large facilities that can't stay open going out of business. But then also, too, we're currently a reduced practice state in Alabama in regards to nurse practitioners. And so basically what that is the nurse practitioner has to enter into an agreement with a supervising physician, so they can't really act independently. And so there are some states that have that are not reduced practice states; they're full practice states. And so they actually have more nurse practitioners able to open up their own facilities. And so once again, increasing access. But yeah, thirdly would be right now there's a cap on telemedicine visits. So basically, if you are seen via telemedicine, there's a 12 visit cap that if your condition is not resolved, you actually have to be seen by a physician in person. Well, I work in home health care, so I see firsthand a lot of times there's patients that don't see resolve in their condition after 12 visits of telemedicine. And so the doctor's like, well, I'm not going to refill your prescription until you come in. Well, they can't come in. They're homebound. They don't have transportation, or they're not physically able. And so they go weeks or months without getting their prescriptions refilled, which hurts them. And then they end up having have to make an emergency room visit, which hurts them again, hurts taxpayers because now it's a big stay at the ER. And so if we would allow there to be no cap on the telemedicine visits for folks that are homebound to just be seen right on, I think that many times that would allow people maybe not direct access, but more access in general. But then at the federal level, some things that I think that we could do to also bring down healthcare costs, but also increasing access is, number one, price transparency. So if you go to the doctor's office right now and you say, how much is this x-ray going to be? I have no idea. And so competition is going to bring prices down, and it's going to allow more access. So if one doctor knows that the other guy is getting all the business because his x-rays are cheaper, then he's going to lower his prices, and then he's going to lower his prices. And eventually you're going to bottom out. But that's going to drive prices down in the meantime. Also, too, allowing insurance companies to sell across state lines, again, just increases competition in the market. Everybody's trying to vie for one another's business. So that brings prices down. Also, one thing that I think that we really need to see is an increase of access of health savings accounts. So right now, businesses are afforded opportunities that regular individuals are not afforded, in the fact that they can pay for an employee's insurance pre-tax. And then whatever money is left over after they pay, they get taxed on that, versus I can't do that and you can't do that. But a health savings account allows that. So you could actually go out, buy your insurance, and then with whatever's left over, that's what the government taxes you on. And so again, just anything that increases competition in the market is going to drive down prices and bring up access.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. And although this might not be something that you will deal with in the House of Representatives, a lot of Alabamians who once have been hesitant to support the expansion of Medicaid are now seeing some research come out that might say it's beneficial to Alabama's economy. What do you have to say about expansion of Medicaid, or supporting it or not supporting it?
I think, again, that's one of the drivers of the affordability crisis is anytime that the government is subsidizing something, that money it never goes away. It's just diverted in different ways. And so anytime that the government's subsidizing something, the demand goes up almost artificially and everybody has access to it. But then that makes the prices go up because everybody's trying to get it. And so I think that, again, if we were to actually increase competition, bring down prices, people would have more money in their pockets to do and get the insurance that they need without increasing prices on people that are maybe not even partaking in the system.
Okay. It's actually a good segue into our next question, talking about subsidies. So several rural hospitals in Alabama have closed in recent years. Would you support the federal government subsidizing these hospitals and supporting them, or do you have a different solution?
But yeah, same answer there to that one, in the sense that anytime you subsidize something, the demand gets artificially inflated because the government doesn't have the same incentives as me and you, because they can print money and they're not worried about being profitable. And so I just think it would be, just look at anything, whether it's housing, whether it's healthcare, whether it's college, anything the government gets involved in, over time it becomes much more expensive. And so I'm talking to someone the other day in regards to college, and they're telling me that in the 70s, they would take a part-time job during the summer, work, save up enough money to pay for a full semester of college. Well, that was before the government was as heavily involved in subsidizing college. And so anytime they get involved, prices go up. So I think the less government, the better, the lower prices, the more access. True free market capitalism is what I think is going to really make things better for everybody.
And do you think that with just decreasing the limitations on CNAs, will that draw in enough CNAs and doctors, physicians to be supported by these rural hospitals? Or do you think that there should be other subsidies or incentives for more doctors to stay in Alabama, because right now we are in a nursing crisis.
Right, talking about the nurse practitioners in the reduced practice.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's like what I said as far as has to work together in tandem. One thing in and of itself, I don't think is going to fix the problem. But if we're fixing the telemedicine, if we're fixing the nurse practitioners, if we're fixing the certificate of need laws, and then at the federal level, if we're doing the things that I mentioned there, I think that we will see a real shift without having to subsidize. And it's not that this is one thing that, left, right, doesn't matter. I think that many times we really do want the same outcome. It's just, how do you get there? And so I truly do believe, based off of my knowledge and the things that I've looked at, that the less government is involved, it is going to make things cheaper and it is going to give people more access. And so I don't think that we've truly tried that. And so I'd like to see that done in a real way. And I think it would bring into outcomes that I think everybody would be happy with.
Do you think that the federal government should have removed some of their funds for Alabama for SNAP benefits, or do you think that that's not an overreach?
In regards to like cutting out certain foods that are
cutting out
SNAP eligible
populations for it. So like right now, I think there was discussion on cutting to the poverty line of the national poverty line instead of the state poverty line. More about subsidizing, like kind of how Medicaid is right now. If we subsidize Medicaid, there would be 300,000 more people in Alabama. Those 300,000 people in Alabama are also on SNAP benefits. Would you support litigation to remove?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing that comes to mind was last year the Big Beautiful Bill passed, which was trying to implement the work requirements beginning in 2028. That is something that I would definitely be in support of. I think it is important, though, that it is legitimate in the sense that, I mean, if you're someone that was born with a disability or, for whatever reason, literally cannot work or unable to get the funds necessary, I mean, there's a discussion to be had there. But for able-bodied individuals that are able to work, I mean, I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be those types of requirements in place.
Do you support tariffs to support American infrastructure without increasing consumer prices?
I do not support tariffs. As what I would label myself as a true conservative, I see tariffs as taxes on the American people. I know a lot of people like to say that it's foreign governments or foreign nations that are paying the tariffs. That is not true, no matter who it is. So let's say you're a small business and you would like to, you see a product that's overseas and you think it's going to do well on the shelves at your business. You're the one that's paying the tariff in order to bring it over to the United States because you want it on the shelves of your business. But then on top of that, whenever that business owner is paying the tariffs, you're going to pass that on to the consumers. And so no matter which way you slice it, Americans are paying them and it's making prices go up. So I'm against, as we talked about earlier, big government, central planning. And so I think the way to protect American businesses here in the U.S. is to make America the most desirable place to do business instead of strong arming and saying you do business here or else prices are going to go up on you. And so I would like to see us cutting back on regulations and making this the most desirable place to be. Now, inevitably, certain countries, they do subsidize their labor. They don't maybe have the most ethical practices, say China, right? And so they're going to have a competitive advantage on us as far as being able to get away with paying lower wages and therefore offering lower prices. But I think that our quality, we can overcome that through our quality. And I think that we can overcome that through, once again, making it the best place to be if you're a business. Because, in regards to tariffs, I don't think anybody wants to see higher prices.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got our last question, which is my favorite question. And it's kind of a challenge question for you. But it's in one sentence. Why should people vote for you?
Because I will do a better job than my opponent.
Wait, can you expand? Okay, I know we said one sentence, but can you expand on that?
Well, in regards to all the things that we've just spoken about, I think that it's important that you have independent voices, but people that stand on principles and those set of principles. I think that's important. Right now, we have a lot of yes men and yes women in Congress on both sides, and I don't think that's healthy for our republic. I think that we need folks that where they stand at all times, and you may not agree with them, but at least you know where they're coming from. But whenever you change as the wind blows, that's not a healthy place for our nation. And so I think that we've seen that from my opponent. We've seen that from a lot of people in Congress. And so that's not the person I'm aiming to be. And I think that's why I would end up doing a better job than my opponent.
Great.
That's powerful.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Steady, smoothing. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
It's a pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
We appreciate it too.
Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to vote on August 11th, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.